The story begins with a young boy named Sirus, known for his honor and integrity, who has just activated a unique system. This system allows him to awaken the deepest lust within anyone he focuses on. He stands in a dangerous dungeon with his companions, sword in hand, ready to take on monsters. But suddenly, his companions turn pale with fear, shouting that their information was wrong and the monsters here are far stronger than expected. Realizing they've been used as bait, they frantically call for everyone to flee. As they scramble to retreat, monsters emerge from the shadows. Among them are goblins and a powerful girl with an elf-like appearance. She grabs one of the men by the head and lifts him effortlessly off the ground. By the time she releases him, he is already dead. With a calm expression, she mocks the supposed strength of a human hero, calling it weak and pitiful. Her eyes glint with murderous intent as she declares that no one could ever rival her great king. This fearsome girl is Yug, princess of the Demon King. As the others flee, a girl named Bella, a D-class hero, remains behind, unable to walk due to her injuries. She urges Sirus to escape too, explaining that the monsters are far beyond their level. She assures him not to worry about her and reminds him that, as an F-grade hero, he has nothing to prove, but he disagrees. With determination, he declares that he came to protect the city, and he can't abandon his duty in such a crucial moment. He reassures her, confidently stating that he will handle the demon girl himself. Meanwhile, as the others make their escape, Yug watches them go with a relaxed expression, casually remarking that humans are far too weak to capture her interest. Sirus, still resolute, tells Bella again that he won't run from this fight. As he speaks, blood suddenly trickles from his nose. Bella, alarmed, asks if he's all right. In a panicked tone, she insists that just standing there against these enemies is already pushing his body to its limits, urging him that he needs to escape immediately. As she pleads with him to leave, the goblins spot him in the distance. They quickly inform Yug, addressing her with the utmost respect. She glances over and begins running towards Sirus, followed by the goblins. With a cold, deadly glare, she orders them to kill him. Sprinting toward him with incredible speed, she adds that she plans to use his head as a wine glass for her beloved king. He notices her approach but remains calm. He opens his system and activates a command called Lava Teo Che. As she closes in, ready to strike, he quickly locks the command onto her and activates it. Her face twists in fury, but instead of killing him, she grabs his head and leans in, kissing him on the lips. As their lips meet, a message appears to him, confirming that the kiss is complete and granting him 100 attack points. Sirus' system has the ability to continuously enhance his combat abilities. Bella watches, stunned by the unexpected turn of events. Embarrassed and shocked, she shouts at him, demanding to know what he is doing. Meanwhile, Yug remains seated on the ground, still holding him as she continues kissing him. The goblins, equally bewildered, respectfully ask her about what she is doing. Seeing their shock and noticing that she is distracted, Sirus quickly takes advantage of the situation. He strikes one of the goblins with his sword, killing it instantly. Suddenly, Yug snaps out from Sirus' system's magic and comes to her consciousness. As she moves back, Sirus wipes his lips clean with a confident gesture. While Bella looks on, completely confused, Yug, now disoriented, wonders why she kissed him instead of killing him. Realizing that the human must have caused her unexpected actions, she tries to make sense of what just happened. While everyone processes these strange events, he stands firm, declaring loudly that he will sacrifice his whole being to protect the city's residents. He challenges the monsters to come at him, vowing to fight to the end. Watching him, some goblins begin murmuring among themselves. One comments that she just kissed the human, wondering if she might have feelings for him. Another replies that he's heard rumors that she recently showed interest in someone younger, which could explain things. The first goblin agrees, saying he'd heard similar talk, but never imagined the object of her interest would be a human. They note how calm Sirus is, standing his ground without flinching. As they speculate, a third goblin suddenly scolds them harshly, calling them fools and demanding to know how they dare question her loyalty to the king. He sneers, saying only filthy humans indulge in betrayal like that. Meanwhile, Yug remains troubled. She silently vows that the king must never learn of her kiss with a human, though she can't shake the strange feeling. As she dwells on it, a message appears in Sirus' system, informing him that the demon's lust index has reached 15%. Furious, Yug commands her goblins to kill him. The goblins advance, axes at the ready position. Meanwhile, Sirus steels himself, raising his sword and focusing intently. One goblin lunges, swinging its axe down with force. Sirus aims at him, but as the axe collides with his sword, his blade shatters instantly. Shocked, he can hardly believe a single strike broke his weapon. The goblin readies for another attack. As it swings at his head, Sirus quickly ducks, narrowly evading the blow. He realizes that while his defenses haven't improved, his attack power has increased by 100 points. He springs back up, gripping the broken blade. With a quick slash across the goblin's chest, he cut its axe in two. Another goblin rushes in from behind, but Sirus swiftly positions himself, delivering a powerful downward strike. The blow sends the goblin flying into the air. From a distance, Bella watches the battle in astonishment. She can hardly believe Sirus's display of power, marveling that he had sent the goblin flying with strength far beyond what anyone would expect from an F-grade hero. Spotting the goblin he attacks still alive with only a scratch on its chest, Sirus realizes he'll need to land a fatal blow to finish it off. Distracted by the enemy in front of him, he fails to see an attack coming from behind. As he turns around, he sees Yug flying toward him, her enormous foot aimed directly at him. He tries to react, but she's already too close. Yug's kick lands with explosive force, sending rocks and debris flying in all directions. Some stones even hit Bella, startling her. As the dust settles, the goblins look on, satisfied, muttering that Yug has put the human in his place. Sirus lies on the ground, pain surging through him, while Yug sits atop him, leaving him feeling utterly defeated. Suddenly, he notices a goblin approaching with a murderous grin, its axe raised to strike the final blow. Helpless, Sirus braces himself. But just as the goblin nears, Yug lashes out with her large tail, striking it and sending it away. The other goblins freeze in shock, watching as the fallen goblin drops its axe and lies motionless on the ground. They turn to Yug, confused and awaiting an explanation. Still seated on Sirus, Yug issues a stern command, declaring that they are to obey her without question. She warns that anyone who dares disobey her will be killed. Casting a strange look at Sirus, she states that she intends to teach him a lesson herself. As she gazes at him, her lust index increases to 91. The goblins watch in astonishment, agreeing with each other that she should kill the human. However, Yug's expression changes as she gently holds Sirus's head, her demeanor now one of twisted affection. She leans in, a strange and romantic look in her eyes, and brings his ear to her mouth. Sirus watches in confusion and unease as she begins to suck on his ear. Despite the discomfort, he feels his defense value rise by 50. Although grateful for the boost, he can't help but feel disturbed by the situation. He questions if this strange act is the price he has to pay for his newfound power. Deep down, as an upright person, he feels insulted, but he resolves that a blow to his pride is a small price to pay for the safety of the city. Meanwhile, Yug is puzzled and blushing, wondering why she, as a powerful monster, is doing this to a human. She realizes she should stop but finds herself unable to pull away. With a final kiss on Sirus's neck, she feels a growing helplessness as her body seems to act against her will. As she kisses him, Sirus's agility increases by 120. The goblins, still watching in confusion, comment on how odd Yug's actions are. One asks why she isn't just killing him. Another goblin, however, urges them to pay closer attention, explaining with a knowing smile that Yug is seeking a breakthrough by these actions. He warns them not to speak recklessly unless they understand what is going on. Meanwhile, Sirus checks his abilities and sees that his defense has risen to 130 and his attack power has reached 150. Realizing the boost to his stats, Sirus feels confident that he's now equipped to handle the group of monsters. Determined to fight back, he prepares to strike Yug with his broken sword. However, one of the goblins warns her from behind, and Yug quickly intercepts his attack with her tail. Sirus soon realizes that his current abilities are not enough to take on these foes. She grabs him by the neck and slams him against the wall. The goblins watch in awe, now fully convinced that Yug intends to kill him. They acknowledge that doubting her was a mistake and, excited by the spectacle, urge her to finish him off. But Yug remains conflicted, her body feeling strangely out of control. She moves closer to Sirus, a mix of menace and flirtation in her smile, and remarks that these insignificant humans dare challenge monsters like them. With a twisted grin, she declares she will strip him. In an instant, she tears Sirus' armor to shreds, leaving him naked and stunned by the sudden exposure. Still gripping his neck, she states that she must show the humans the vast difference between their fragile bodies and the strength of monsters. With a smile, she adds that she's eager to see his muscles. One of the goblins comments on how ruthless Yug is and advises the others to learn from this example. Meanwhile, Sirus worries about his destroyed armor. As he glances at Yug's hand, he realizes she's not done yet. Determined, he declares he will endure and not let her get any closer. However, as he sees Yug preparing for more and watching her mouth water with anticipation, he feels a surge of resolve. He knows he can withstand this challenge and decides to hold his ground. Yug presses a deep kiss to Sirus' cheek, her lust index finally reaching 100%. The sensation is overwhelming, and Sirus can do nothing but endure the relentless kisses. Despite his efforts to stay composed, he's powerless against her constant and affectionate advances. She continues to hold him tightly, and their interaction takes on a distinctly romantic tone. He feels a mix of embarrassment and frustration, realizing that his current strength is not enough to effectively confront these monsters. Meanwhile, Bella watches in confusion and shame, unsure whether they are in a battle or something else entirely. As Yug embraces him, Sirus resolves that he will sacrifice his personal dignity for the greater goal of protecting the city's residents. With newfound resolve, he gently holds Yug's head and asks her to continue, expressing his desire to increase his strength and status. As their intimate interaction continues, Sirus' abilities begin to rise dramatically. His agility increases by 200, defense by 300, and his concentration reaches 450. His sense rises to 700, intelligence grows by 830, endurance jumps to 900, magic power surges by 1000, and his attack power increases by 1100. Just as his abilities are rapidly enhancing, a new presence emerges behind them, wielding a sword. The figure freezes when he sees what is happening, his sword slipping from his hand in shock. He calls out to Yug in disbelief, and she, blushing and visibly embarrassed, turns to face him. The goblins, recognizing the figure, grow even more astonished. They refer to him as King, revealing the imposing figure to be the demon lord named Bartley. Sirus, now aware of the situation, senses the new presence with his enhanced abilities. As he regains his focus, he notices that all his bonus stats have doubled, and his level has increased by 1. Bartley, enraged, unleashes a surge of power, declaring his intent to kill Sirus. Yug's face flushed with embarrassment, addresses Bartley as king and assures him that the situation isn't what it seems. She pleads for the chance to explain everything. Meanwhile, Sirus, determined to fight, picks up his broken sword and prepares for battle. Bartley roars with fury and instantly teleports himself towards Sir and Yug using a powerful teleportation technique. Addressing Yug as his beloved concubine, he commands Sirus to stay away from her. In a swift motion, Bartley slashes at him with his sword, sending him hurtling through the air. Yug watches in stunned confusion as Sirus' already damaged armor is further torn apart, and he crashes painfully to the ground. Seated on the ground, Bella, filled with fear and concern, asks if he is all right. Despite the pain coursing through him, Sirus manages to pull himself up beside her and reassures her, saying he can still endure. Bella, overwhelmed by sadness and worry, looks at him with tearful eyes. He, catching his breath, turns his gaze toward Bartley, who stands a short distance away, while Yug remains kneeling, strangely calm. Puzzled by Bartley's sudden appearance and his staggering attack power, Sirus tries to make sense of the situation. Meanwhile, Bartley speaks to Yug in a deceptively calm tone, reminding her of her earlier promises. He questions why she is repeating her past mistakes, despite her vows to refrain from such actions. His voice carries a hint of sadness as he warns that she had agreed there would be severe consequences if she slipped up again. Yug listens to his reprimand in silence at first, but then her demeanor shifts dramatically to one of anger. She yells back, accusing Bartley of being the one at fault. She demands to know why he arrived so late and asks what he had been doing all this time. Her outburst leaves Bartley and the goblins dumbfounded. Standing up, her tone now firm and resolute, she declares that his tardiness nearly forced her to repeat her previous missteps, insisting that the current predicament is entirely due to his failure to act sooner. She continues to vent her frustration, accusing Bartley of making a mess of things and still having the audacity to question and threaten her. Bartley, stunned by her outburst, stands speechless. She points out that it took him far too long to arrive and demands to know what he was doing all that time. After her sharp words, she turns away, her anger palpable. Bartley's anger fades and his demeanor softens. He speaks more calmly, acknowledging that she has every right to be upset. He admits his mistake and apologizes. He explains that he had been dealing with humans fleeing earlier and hadn't been able to reach her sooner. With a touch of sincerity, he promises not to make the same mistake again. The goblins, observing the shift in Bartley's attitude, are surprised. One of them politely comments on the king's clear affection for Yug, noting how humbly he admitted his faults. He adds that it's no wonder Bartley won the heart of such a powerful woman. The second goblin jokingly mentions that he's nowhere near the king's level and should probably stay single for now. The third goblin, seemingly inspired, says he'll confess his feelings to Miss Satyr the next day. As the goblins chat, Sirus, sweating and nervous, sees an opportunity to slip away unnoticed. Realizing the vast difference in strength between himself and Bartley, he decides escaping is the best option. Meanwhile, Yug starts crying dramatically, and Bartley, in a romantic mood, tries to comfort her, his voice full of empathy as he claims his heart is breaking. Quietly, Sirus and Bella begin to slip away. As they walk, Sirus gently asks Bella if she's able to manage on her own or if he should carry her. Bella reassures him that she's fine. Her leg is only slightly fractured, and she can walk on her own. Yug continues to cry, lamenting that Bartley's delay had almost led her to be tempted by that human, nearly tainting their pure and faithful love. Bartley, offering a reassuring smile, tells her not to cry. However, his mood shifts suddenly, turning dark and threatening as he declares that if this was truly because of that human, he would kill him right away. He asks if Yug would feel any sadness about it, muttering to himself that of course she wouldn't be embarrassed. In a softer tone, she hugs Bartley's leg and calls him her king, proclaiming that he is her eternal love and that even in death they would return to nothingness together. As Bartley glances at Sirus and Bella, he notices they are trying to sneak away. His anger flares, and he calls the goblins fools, scolding them for almost letting them escape. He questions if they couldn't stop them. One goblin, smiling, compliments Bartley's commanding presence and explains that Yug had given an order to prevent any interference. Bartley dismisses them as brainless and, with a surge of power, teleports directly to Sirus and Bella. As they walk, Sirus hears something strike the roof and realizes it's Bartley. He tells Bella in disbelief that Bartley has come after them again. In a flash, Bartley appears before them, blocking their escape. Bella, terrified by his menacing presence, is pushed aside by Sirus, who attempts to protect her. Bartley, furious, demands to know how he dared to seduce his beloved Yug. Without hesitation, he strikes him with a powerful blow, sending him crashing to the ground near Yug. Sirus, stunned and in excruciating pain, feels several ribs crack. He realizes he is completely powerless against Bartley's strength. Yug watches, distressed for Sirus. Sirus, struggling to focus through the pain, realizes that Bartley's speed is so overwhelming it's nearly impossible to track. At his current level, he knows he stands no chance against him. Bartley, intent on ending this, teleports closer to him and points his sword at him. He announces loudly that he plans to split him in two, declaring that this is the price he must pay for trying to seduce his beloved Yug. Meanwhile, Sirus, immobilized by fear and pain, realizes there is no way to escape his fate. As Bartley's sword slashes dangerously close to his face, he frantically commands his system to lock in quickly. But just as the blade is about to strike, Yug suddenly swings her hand and slaps Bartley hard across the face. The force of the blow redirects his sword into the ground, narrowly missing Sirus. She shouts at Bartley to stop hurting him. Stunned, Bartley freezes, staring at her in disbelief. Seizing the moment, Sirus quickly regains his footing, declaring that he needs to escape. Without wasting another second, he dashes away from the chaos. Bartley, bewildered and seething with rage, demands to know why she interfered. But as he watches her, his anger fades, replaced by confusion and heartbreak when he realizes that her concern for Sirus is real. As Sirus sprints through the woods, he receives a sudden notification. His level has increased by 1, a boost apparently triggered by surviving the Demon Lord's critical strike. While still running, he wonders if he could take on Bartley now, but ultimately decides it's wiser to keep putting distance between them for the moment. Meanwhile, Yug's demeanor shifts to a more romantic one. Her eyes fixed on Sirus, she declares her yearning for him. But before she can reach him, Bartley grabs her hand, desperation clear in his eyes. He reminds her of her recent vow of eternal love for him and begs her not to leave. However, she remains resolute. She pulls her hand free from his grip, and with a determined smile, rushes towards Sirus. Without hesitation, she leaps onto him, sending him to the ground. She passionately kisses him, her heart aflame with desire. Sirus, overwhelmed by the sudden shift, feels his abilities increase. His vitality rises by 180, concentration by 140, attack power by 210, perception by 140, and agility by 230. Bartley, watching in utter disbelief, feels his resolve crumble. With a polite yet broken expression, he laments that it's his own inadequacies that allowed a mere human to steal his beloved. He takes full responsibility, bowing his head slightly. Determined to fix everything, he promises Yug that he will end Sirus's life so she can return to her senses. However, Yug glares at him with anger and demands that he be quiet, telling him not to interrupt her time with Sirus. Bartley is taken aback by her response. Overcome with embarrassment and heartache, he drops to his knees, crying out in anguish. Sirus's level increases by 5 as the system message indicates that the Demon King is breaking down. Meanwhile, Bella steps forward, brandishing a sword and calling Yug a shameless monster. She orders her to leave Sirus alone. Despite Bella's confrontation, Yug remains calm. Sirus urgently warns Bella not to approach, sensing the danger. But before she can make a move, Yug calmly ensnares her with her long tail, slamming her against the wall and rendering her immobile. Yug then turns her attention back to Sirus, continuing her romantic advances. Sirus feels a mix of embarrassment and a small sense of pleasure amid the situation. Seeing this, Bartley raises his sword and accuses Yug and the others of deceiving him. Enraged, he roars and teleports toward her, declaring that she will pay for her deceit. With immense force, he swings his sword toward her, intent on killing her. However, just as the sword nears her face, Bartley halts the attack. Realizing he can restrain himself, Yug turns away, resuming her attention on Sirus. Bartley, consumed by anger yet unable to harm Yug, drops to his knees and begins to roar in despair. His heart shattered, he places his sword on the ground, and a green light emanates from his chest, signaling his emotional breakdown. Sirus's level increases by 3 as the system message confirms the Demon King's complete collapse. Yug, taken aback by the sight, asks fearfully what Bartley intends to do next. The goblins, equally stunned, react in various ways. One pleads with Bartley, begging him not to take out his wrath on them, as they are innocent. Another goblin wonders if they should disobey Yug's orders and flee. The third goblin urgently shouts for the others to run, warning them of an impending disaster. Panic spreads among the goblins, and they flee the scene. Meanwhile, a strange light erupts from Bartley's body, causing shock and fear to ripple through everyone present. He roars in anguish, his heart shattering further. As a result, Sirus's level increases to 10, and he unlocks a new skill. A strange yellow light envelops Sirus, signaling a surge of newfound power. Recognizing this change, he quickly gets to his feet, gripping his broken sword. With newfound agility, he executes a rapid slash at Bartley's neck, then instantly shifts 5 meters away. The newly unlocked skill, a swift body slash, allows him to transform into a phantom, appearing within a 5-meter radius of his target to deliver a lethal strike. As he repositions himself, Bartley collapses to his knees, his head cleanly severed. His lifeless body slumps to the ground. Yug stands frozen, stunned by the sight. A notification pops up for Sirus that the self-destruction sequence has been halted. Calmly, he reflects that as he levels up, he will likely acquire even more powerful skills. Meanwhile, Yug, bewildered, mutters in disbelief. She questions if this is truly happening, pointing out that Sirus had never displayed such abilities before, and that this second attempt was supposed to be more subdued. She dismisses him as a weakling. However, before she can process what just happened, Bartley, headless, rises from the ground. With surprising speed, he lunges at Yug, wrapping his arms around her. She freezes in terror, screaming as his grip tightens. In that moment, her tail releases Bella, who starts to fall. Sirus swiftly catches Bella in his arms, saving her from hitting the ground. In a voice filled with sorrow, Bartley commands Yug to honor her promise and die with him. But Yug, now completely terrified, pleads desperately, saying she doesn't want to die. Another system message appears for Sirus, warning that Bartley is on the verge of self-destruction. Yug, overwhelmed with panic, sobs uncontrollably, begging Bartley to let her go. She cries out for someone to save her. Reacting quickly, Sirus strikes Bartley's arm with his sword, severing it, and pulls Yug free from his grasp. Bartley, now headless and missing an arm, collapses, still calling out desperately for Yug. But it's too late. His broken form releases a massive explosion that obliterates everything around him. The force of the blast rips apart the floor, sending Sirus, Bella, and Yug plummeting down into the depths of the dungeon below. As they fall, Yug begins to melt away. When they hit the ground, Bella ends up landing on top of Sirus, leaving him awkwardly positioned between her legs. Dazed, Sirus places a hand on his own chest, trying to gather his bearings and wondering if they truly fell to the dungeon's floor. To his surprise, when he lifts his hand, he finds a small salamander sitting there. Confused, he glances at his status bar and sees that the creature is actually Yug, now transformed into this tiny form. Startled by Sirus' reaction, Yug quickly scurries away and hides in his pocket. Meanwhile, Bella stirs, groaning and rubbing her head as she regains consciousness. She looks around, trying to find Sirus, but doesn't see him because he's still lying awkwardly beneath her. A notification pops up on Sirus' status bar: Demon Lord Bartley successfully defeated. As a reward, Sirus receives the Nea dungeon map. A prompt asks if he wants to open it immediately. Unsure, he hesitates, debating whether it's the right time to look. While he's lost in thought, Bella finally realizes Sirus' position beneath her. Flustered, she quickly jumps up and turns away, stammering an apology. Embarrassed, she hides her face, cheeks flushed. Sirus sits up, deciding to press the yes button to reveal the map. To his amazement, the dungeon layout materializes before him, displaying detailed symbols for dead ends, traps, resources, and even a path to the boss room. Excited, Sirus marvels at the map's usefulness, relieved he won't have to worry about getting lost. Bella, noticing his excitement, leans closer to see what he's looking at. Confused, she asks what he's talking about. Sirus simply waves it off, explaining that it's nothing, thinking to himself that only he can see the system's display. He stands up, extending a hand to Bella, suggesting they get moving. Bella takes his hand and rises to her feet, agreeing that they need to find a way out. Just as they prepare to leave, Sirus suddenly collapses to his knees. Without warning, he begins vomiting violently. Bella gasps, panic flooding her eyes as she watches him struggle, completely baffled by the sudden turn of events. As he looks down at his trembling hand, he notices his veins glowing and a bright pink light radiating from his little finger. Panic surges through him, and he clutches his hand, screaming in agony as the searing pain intensifies. Horrified, he watches as his little finger begins to melt away. Overcome with pain, he writhes on the floor, crying out that it hurts beyond measure. Bella, looking on in shock, notices blood staining his back. Heart racing, she quickly lifts him into her arms and places him gently on her lap, realizing that his back is already bleeding profusely. She knows she can't let him rub against the rough ground any longer. As she holds him, she feels the heat radiating from his body. It's like he's burning from the inside. The pink light flickers faintly from his half-melted finger before the pain finally subsides. Sirus' face pale and drenched in sweat, mutters weakly that the pain has stopped. Bella watches him with deep concern, unable to hide her anxiety. As he slowly sits up, he reassures her, saying he's all right. But Bella, still confused and shaken, demands to know what just happened to his body and why his finger melted. With a pained expression, he explains that he's been poisoned. He begins to recount what happened 6 months ago when monsters attacked the city. During that chaos, he witnessed several monsters locked in battle with a hero from the guild, fighting over a strange, sealed box. Amid the struggle, the monster's axe accidentally struck the box, breaking it open. The impact was so intense that when the axe hit the ground, Sirus was sent flying into nearby rocks, bruised and disoriented. The hero holding the box had no time to react as ominous red clouds suddenly formed overhead. To everyone's horror, blood began to rain from the sky. The sharp, pungent odor was so overpowering that it made Sirus nauseous, almost causing him to vomit. As the blood touched the monsters and the hero, their screams filled the air as their bodies started to dissolve. Sirus, still lying helpless among the rubble, felt an excruciating pain in his back, as if it too was melting. Though he wasn't directly touched by the blood, the toxic fumes alone were enough to poison him. Sirus explains to Bella that he eventually woke up in a hospital, where a doctor gravely informed him that the poison was so severe he had only 1 year left to live. However, his status bar revealed a sliver of hope that the blood of the demon god could cure the poison. At that moment, overwhelmed and desperate, Sirus was given another prompt on his status bar, asking if he wanted to become a player in the system to receive guidance on how to obtain the antidote. Without hesitation, he pressed the yes button, unlocking new information. The system revealed that the blood of the demon god was hidden deep within the Nea dungeon. Now, as he finishes recounting his story to Bella, he explains that his investigations confirmed that the antidote could only be found deep within this underground labyrinth. Vela, still processing everything, gently takes his hand and helps him to his feet. He mentions that there's a room up ahead stocked with clothes and weapons. They decide to head there first to prepare themselves. She nods in agreement, and together, they make their way toward their next destination.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.